There's this story I've been working on for about a year now. It's a story about scam, fraud, power, and corruption. Something we're all too familiar with at the moment. But this very one led to the death of an innocent woman whose only crime was trying to get her money back. When it all started, young Nigerians like myself were excited about the prospect. We all got on board knowing the risk was high, but so was the reward. People got their life savings in and they made millions, but not all were that lucky. At the end of it all, some were left with empty bags, some got death threats, others lost their hopes and had to start rebuilding again. But the figure behind it all got away. How did this happen? I know it is easy to blame victims of Ponzi and pyramid schemes for not doing their due diligence before investing their money. But this is different. You have a giant bank working with one, a government agency certifying that the order was legit. So what could go wrong? Well, it turned out everything. As you listen to the stories of these victims, you will see that this didn't start as a scam. There was a turning point, and that was what I was so interested in that led me on the journey to unravel the hidden truth behind it all. As I dug deeper into it, I discovered certain familiar stories in the not so distant past. Fraudulent companies using similar tactics to scam Nigerians of their hard-earned money. But the shocking part of it all is no one seems to be going to jail for any of this. So what is going on? I hope you learn from this and know when to walk away from investments that seem too good to be true, because sometimes they just are. Anyways, the question I'm most interested in right now is, who helped them get away? Let's go unravel some crazy stuff. Sitting in the market square on a rainy day is 𝗬𝗃cie, a widow with 3 young children. She sells cassava flakes, popularly known as garri, in the Onitsha main market. As the skies open to a heavy downpour, only one thing runs through her mind. Where can she get more money to settle her many piling bills? Her children will be out of school in 2 days if she fails to raise their fees. The landlord has served her the 3rd quit notice. She needs to sell the last of this garri to be able to get food tonight. But wait, maybe there's hope for her. She could decide to sell her husband's only farmland. That can at least fetch her about 500,000 naira. With that, she can invest in the new business opportunity her friend has been benefiting from. Since she will get her capital back in 6 months' time, 50,000 naira per month from that investment will go a long way to reduce the pressure on her, don't you think? As 𝗬𝗃cie ponders on this thought, taking her time to make sure she was making the right decision, Joseph, on the other hand, was done with his own calculations. He is a young man in his mid-30s. He recently ran into some troubles with his business and his family has been having a tough time feeding, let alone doing any other thing. Instead of starving and having to do menial jobs waiting for breakthrough from somewhere, Joseph decided hope was never a good strategy. He would sell his only property in the village, from where he would raise at least 5 million naira, which he can invest in this new empowerment program that is liberating many of his friends from poverty. A 1-year plan is all he needs to be able to gather good enough capital to restart his business again. So, without delay, he placed his property on the market. Ben is the oldest of 3 siblings. His parents are no more. For 5 years now, he has been shouldering the responsibility of providing for his family. But combining school with work has never been easy and is beginning to tell on his grades. So he called his siblings together and told them of a new investment scheme, one that has been paying for close to a year now. His friends are making a killing from this one and he thinks it's the best time for them to take advantage of this opportunity. Their parents had left them a house which is worth about 10 million naira. Ben suggests they sell the property and invest the money in this investment platform for 6 months. It will pay them a return of 20% per month for the next 6 months, after which they can terminate and take their capital. This will be a good way to start something that will make their late parents proud of them. 𝗬𝗃cie, Joseph and Ben all sold their properties to invest in a business opportunity, one that promised to liberate them from poverty, one that just a few weeks prior had obtained an SEC license to operate as money managers, an investment that gave them hope for a better tomorrow. With his charismatic leadership and young team, Addyfx and Investment was redefining investment and money management in a Nigerian market riddled with poor governance, high inflation, unemployment and recession. At the height of its operation, everyone wanted to be part of the goodies coming out of this company. It was the talk of the town, and in these towns were many people like 𝗬𝗪𝐶𝑖, Joseph, and Ben, whose desperation and their economic conditions made them the perfect prey for this large predator paying out old customers with new recruits. No one would know, at least until May of 2021, when these three were expecting their first payout. This was their moment to have a taste of what others have been enjoying for over 16 months. However, it was not to be, as Francis Adams, the chairman and founder of Addy Finance and Investments, failed to pay his investors, and just like a flash, their money was gone. But how did this happen? This couldn't have crashed just like that. Wait, they said they were into forex trading, right? And they had real estate investment too. How about the food business they have been advertising? And the SEC said they were legit, right? Come on, man, they had a license, so they were definitely looked into by the SEC for them to have been given a license, right? Right? This is Francis Uju Adams, the founder and chairman of the now defunct Addy Finance and Investment Company. In May 2021, Mr. Francis, through his investment company, made away with billions of investors' funds. The company, which claimed it was making money for the investors through the foreign exchange market, turned out to be a giant Ponzi scheme that was basically paying old investors with new recruits. At the time of his crash in May 2021, Mr. Francis claimed the company had a license from the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) as a recognized fund and portfolio manager, and was also registered with the Funds Managers Association of Nigeria, something I found very interesting. For one, how does the Securities and Exchange Commission grant license to an investment platform without first doing some thorough background checks to make sure these guys were legit and that they had good business that could, to some levels, guarantee investors' funds? Secondly, where was the CBN when this company, which clearly was into banking activities, was established? Who did the registration of this company? And what regulatory body was checking the activities of the company? These were my questions when I started researching this company and talking to people to understand what really happened. When I spoke to some insiders who wanted to remain anonymous, I was shocked with the revelations I was getting. A former company employee disclosed that the company's agreement with the SEC was a new selling point that brought in over $1 billion in new investments just before the crash. But just as soon as the license came in, investors started to pull out their funds because they felt the new percentage of 5 to 10% was now too low for them. According to the insider, the management started putting pressure on us to go out and get more money, and that was when we started getting the gist. As investors started pulling out, panic began spreading, and when word got out about what was happening, a certain high-profile investor pulled out a whopping 5 billion naira, and that was the end. While there's always a certain end for all types of Ponzi schemes, a former employee who had worked in the sales department of the company believed other factors must have accelerated the crash of Addy Finance and Investments. In his words, the staff were hired based on familiarity and not based on professionalism. According to this former employee, most of the staff were friends and relatives of the MD. In fact, the MD's Bolt driver, according to him, was the one who later became the executive director. The employee said he felt there was gross mismanagement of funds because most of the guys in management were living very flamboyant lifestyles, booking 4-star hotels when they traveled to Abuja. He also said Addy opened too many branches that were unnecessary and costly to maintain. The fallout, of course, was felt by investors who had their lives taken away from them. An investor who wants to remain anonymous had invested all his savings in the company and was getting ROI for over 12 months when the company crashed. When he got informed that some people were getting their money back, he made several efforts to recoup some of his capital, no matter how small. His mother needed the money for immediate medical treatments. Prior to the crash, he had maintained a relationship with Mr. Francis, but now the wanted boss could not even take his calls. Days turned to weeks, and weeks into months. The mother could no longer bear the suffering, and she passed away. This single loss was devastating to him. He thought Addy Finance and Investment would change his life and that of his family. Rather, it took everything from him, even the closest in his family. Another investor believed Mr. Francis deliberately tricked his investors by making his business look legitimate. Meanwhile, it was a Ponzi scheme in disguise. These aggrieved investors believed Mr. Francis has gone into hiding, being protected by powerful people. Otherwise, why is he not being charged to court? Why is he not getting prison time for his huge fraud? Operating without a license should at least attract some penalty, right? Don't you think? Oh, wait, he had a license from the SEC. According to the insider, the SEC had failed to check Addy's accounts before granting it a license. Because if they had really checked their accounts, they would have known that something was not right. The money Addy Finance and Investment were using to diversify was not coming from profits. They were basically using investors' funds to diversify into projects like real estate, all while paying returns as high as 20% monthly. So, if the SEC really did their job well, they could have checked and seen that the business was not sustainable and shut it down before it was too late. I guess we will never know how they got around it. One of the many reasons why Nigeria is a wild place both for legitimate business people and customers alike. But you haven't seen the worst of it yet, because the next one will leave you stunned at how much illegality goes on in the Nigerian financial sector. As scenes from the collapse of Addy Finance and Investment were unraveling, another company whose owner had vanished into thin air and whose activities were being investigated by the CBN and law enforcement kept promising its investors that they will get their funds back. Mr. 𝗪𝗃cie𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗵, the founder and chief executive of MBA Trading and Capital Investment Limited, aka MBAForex, was declared wanted by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in December 2021 for fraud. This was after making away with over 200 billion naira of investors' funds. What I found interesting while looking into his story was the roles played by a giant bank and prominent politicians as the events unfolded. So I'm on this research, surfing through the web, going over dozens of documents to answer one particular question about MBAForex, and that was, how did he pull this off? I mean, he couldn't have been acting alone, right? And then I came across this beautiful investigation on Nigerian banks and their roles in fraud, terror financing, and wait for it, Ponzi schemes. Sweet! This was all I was searching for. This story was done by David Hundeyin, and it highlights incredible details about how Access Bank was complicit in the fraud carried out by MBAForex. To understand why this Ponzi was so successful, we need to look into the life of the mastermind behind it all. This is 𝗪𝗪𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗵. Before the whole MBAForex saga, he was a respected pastor and mentor. He was also some sort of a forex trading expert, even though the source of his wealth is now registered to have come from his Ponzi scheme and not actual trading. According to the article by David Hundeyin, Brother Maxwell had a corporate career in the oil servicing industry before emerging as the first-time winner of the Top Partner of the Year award in the Believers Love Word Ministries, popularly known as Christ Embassy. As it turned out, Brother Maxwell was laying the groundwork for his Ponzi scheme even as he bore the burden of being an ambassador of Christ in the Christ Embassy. What a plot twist for the faithful. I'm sure this must be very hard for them. Anyways, focus. Just like David before me, I've searched everywhere to see where this Pentecostal pastor got his strong background in finance and investment. So much so that he was able to figure out a way to create the enormous returns he promised to his investors. But I guess it was all a work of grace because I found none. This then had to be a Ponzi scheme, right? One so complicated that even the necessary bodies meant to check these activities, investments, failed to take a look until it was all too late. There's a section of the Nigerian banking law that requires MBAForex to obtain an operation license from the central bank and the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. One, because he was soliciting and receiving funds from people, which means he was basically carrying out banking activities. And two, because he was offering commercial investment plans with fixed interest amounts for funds invested for a fixed period of time. This was an activity regulated by the SEC. Again, how did Maxwell get by for so long without questions from the CBN and the SEC? All MBAForex had was a certificate of incorporation obtained from the Corporate Affairs Commission, and boom, he was in business. Now, here's an angle I've been working. This guy was able to open corporate accounts at Access Bank, Ecobank, FCMB, First Bank, GT Bank, Sterling Bank, SunTrust Bank, UBA, Unity Bank, Union Bank, and even Zenith Bank, all without a license from the CBN and the SEC. Now, with all the huge deposits into these accounts by investors and the many transaction activities on these accounts, why didn't any of the banks raise an alarm or try to alert the authorities to look into what he was doing? That has become standard practice with the Nigerian financial institutions of late, right? So what happened with this one? Why the exception? As I read further into David Hundeyi's investigation into this operation, I saw one other company which played a part in this Ponzi scheme. World Citizen Equity Partners Limited. This company claims to be a British company that organizes citizenship by investment for wealthy people. It was registered in Nigeria on March 21, 2018, a few days after MBAForex registered on March 14, 2018. In August 2020, Maxwell Odum transferred 100 million of his shares in MBAForex to 𝗬𝗃𝗂𝗧𝘂𝗧𝗏, that is this company. This was where some familiar names took up investment positions in the Ponzi scheme. Amongst them are a former House of Representatives member and a former Nigerian ambassador to the European Union and African Union respectively. This is Honorable Ahmed Aliyu Wadada and Ambassador Usman Baraya. Both of them somehow decided to buy shares in this Ponzi scheme for some reasons we will never know. But this is where it gets super interesting. Remember, Access Bank was one of the banks listed above where Maxwell has corporate accounts. In fact, Access Bank turned out to be a major player in all of this saga as they held majority of the funds for Maxwell. In this investigation, which I will link down below, David revealed that Access Bank lied under oath when court cases began to roll in, denying that World Citizen Equity Partners ever had an account with them. This was later uncovered to be a lie and an effort by the bank to cover up its own complicity in the scam. So apparently, Access Bank lied and helped Brother Maxwell get away with this scam that cost investors over 200 billion naira of their hard-earned money. A sworn affidavit by Dixon Ukaha, a former Access Bank customer relations manager in Port Harcourt, revealed that not only did 𝗬𝗃𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗂𝗏 maintain an account with Access Bank, but several transfers worth hundreds of millions of naira were made from the MBAForex account to the 𝗬𝗃𝗂𝗏𝗏 account months before the alleged sale of MBAForex by Maxwell Odum. So, what did Access Bank stand to gain by aiding and abetting a fraudster commit such heist that cost investors over 200 billion naira? I wish I had an answer to that question, but are there any jail terms for crimes like this? The chief executive officer of Chinmark Group, Maxman Ijoma, a supposed Nigerian businessman and investor, reportedly duped over 4,000 investors, all while using gospel artists and other social media influencers to promote what many are now referring to as a Ponzi scheme. According to the Vanguard, the investors made payments running into billions under a contractual agreement that the company would on a monthly basis pay an ROI to them. But in a press statement released on the 25th day of December 2021 on its official website, the SEC described Chinmark as an illegal operator, freezing all of its accounts in the process. While Chinmark continues to claim that all investors will eventually receive their capital, sources claim that he has since flown his family away from the country as he stays in hiding. The authorities are yet to arrest and charge Chinmark to court, even as investors continue to protest. Benignant Fort Nigerian Limited is another investment scam that has closed down with investors' funds to the tune of 10 billion naira. The mastermind of this one, Akofili Paul, was accused of gross mismanagement of investment funds. The company headquartered in Jabi, Abuja, and a few other branches in Lagos stopped paying its investors in July of 2021 without giving them any tangible reasons. But before the shops were closed, 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝗧𝘂𝗧𝗂𝗏 was said to have spent over 4.5 million naira on a wedding cake, with a further 45 million naira in other wedding expenses. Despite all this knowledge, 𝗂𝗂𝘂 remains a free man roaming somewhere unknown as investors wait patiently and hopelessly for what's next. 𝗬𝗃𝗂𝗂𝗧𝘂𝗁𝗵, the managing director of Imaging Global Solutions Limited, and Elizabeth, his wife, allegedly robbed unsuspecting investors of over 22 billion naira. The institution, which was founded in 2017, focused on raising capital through investors and lending money to small business owners with a 22% interest rate. At the end of every month, investors are paid up to 3.5% returns depending on the agreement signed. However, things took a sad turn in August 2021 when, for no clear reasons, the company stopped paying returns on investments. And just like the sun in the dead of the night, 𝗬𝗃𝗂𝗧𝘂𝗁𝗵 and his wife vanished with all the money in his personal and company accounts. But there is more. There is always more. The MAP, a company owned by Anyanso Mma, announced an investment scheme in 2018, promising investors attractive returns on a weekly and monthly basis, depending on the agreement. The logistics and bike investment, on which investors were paid a weekly return of at least 30,000 naira, was the company's most patronized scheme. The prompt payment of returns on the scheme made investors confidently recommend it to their relatives and loved ones. For close to 2 years, things were fine until a new investment scheme called Customer Relation Management Investment (CRMI) was introduced by the company. The logistics and bike scheme that investors had been profiting from for close to 2 years suddenly hit a brick wall in September 2020, a month after the CRMI was introduced. At this point, the MAP stopped making payments to investors. In December 2020, Mma was arrested by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission after a few aggrieved investors petitioned the commission over his refusal to pay them. But to the surprise of all these investors, he was released after spending about 3 weeks in custody. Presently, no one knows Mma's location. Investors also claim that over 7.5 billion naira was fraudulently collected through the CRMI. Upon release from the EFCC's custody, he claimed he had invested the 7.5 billion naira in real estate and that the properties were seized by the commission. But he wasn't able to provide any proof of that. Despite cries from investors, he remains at large. So, what are we witnessing here? Is it the investors' fault that they keep getting ripped off by criminal elements, all in the name of investment opportunities, and then when the veil falls off, they discover that they have been scammed, yet the scammers keep walking free? While average Nigerians keep getting ripped off all in the name of investments, the authorities that should have policies in place to prevent these practices continue to lay the blames on these unsuspecting Nigerians. I spoke with a few of these investors who felt the government, especially the SEC, should have done more to protect Nigerians from these frauds. But even if it's difficult to prevent schemes like this from arising again, prosecuting these people would have discouraged others from seeing Ponzi as a business model. Majority of Nigerians have been victims of Ponzi and pyramid schemes at one point in their lives. Multi-level marketing companies sometimes send SMS and mails to unsuspecting Nigerians, promising them job interviews, only for attendees to be presented with seminars on how to promote these ridiculous pyramid schemes. This act alone should constitute wrong advertising and false information or even deceptive practices. The current system does not provide enough deterrence to fraudsters with ambitions of setting up illegal investment schemes. And as long as the SEC keeps pointing fingers at victims rather than look into how easy it is to create such fraudulent companies in the first place, Nigeria will continue to be a hub for Ponzi, pyramid schemes, and other fraudulent companies that continue to steal billions of dollars from unsuspecting citizens. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.